Most people are pricing their products and services poorly. It leads to undercharging, undervaluing. It leads to their businesses going down. One of the most common things that I find when I start working with coaches and healers, especially people in the heart-led industries, if we call it that way. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 different main ways of pricing, pros and cons, and what will, if you apply this in your business, will absolutely change not only your business, your income, the benefits that you give to people, the results that you help them create, and actually change your life and the way you feel about yourself. So, does that sound good or supremely awesome? The first way, most common way that people price themselves, and actually let me get away from saying themselves, the way they price their products or services is they go to what? The market. They look for comparisons. First thing they do is say, okay, if I'm a coach, what are other coaches charging? Or if I'm selling a chocolate bar, what are other chocolate bars? If it's a yoga class, what's the pricing on that? This misses the boat on so many levels. One, because oftentimes what people do with that is they say, okay, here's the average. This is what other people are charging. So I'm going to price myself a little bit below that, thinking, understandably, that, well, that'll make me more attractive. They'll come to me instead of those people. Maybe, probably not, actually. Underpricing seldom leads to higher value and higher sales. Even more important, though, is if it's true that, if it were true, let me put it that way, it's not. If it were true that pricing yourself below the market would get you more business, what are the competitors going to do? Well, I'll follow that same logic. I'll price under. It's commoditization. It's a race to the bottom. No good for anybody. The other thing that people do if they go to the market is they say, and this is a bit better, still not really what you want. A bit better is, okay, the average is here, or these people that I connect with are here, so I'm going to price myself a little bit more. Okay, so maybe there's a, like, I feel something about my value. I know I can serve better. Awesome. That's healthier. Still a problem. Why is it a problem? Second way that people tend to price themselves is, what am I worth? What is an hour of my time worth? And if you track through your life, if you've been in business, or even if you have a job, your hourly wage has gone up over the years, almost for sure. Okay. First problem with that way of pricing is you're thinking in terms of hours. And if you are trading your time for money, it's a losing proposition, because which is more important? Have you heard the expression, time is money? That is a lie that we have been sold that does not serve us. Think about it. Time is way more valuable than money. And the more we advance in years and fall for the belief that we're going to die, sorry, is that too radical? Fall for the belief that we're going to die, and then we create it, time gets even more precious. But either way, even if you think that's too far out there, just think about it this way. Most people think of, as I get older, I've got less time. So it becomes more valuable. We're less willing to do things that we used to do because our time is precious. Now, even bigger problem with this form of pricing according to your value. So let's say you say, okay, my time is worth $500 an hour. And then you go out to the marketplace and you say, if you want to work with me, it's $500 an hour. We'll just keep it real simple. What happens then? Some people might say, that's it, it's only $500 an hour to work with you, I'm in. Here's $500,000. I want, sorry, what is that? No, let's say $50,000. You know, too many zeros. $50,000, I want 10 hours of your time. Then, if we're excited about our value being $500 an hour, we're like, cool, my value is good. However, What happens if you go to the marketplace, it's only $500 to work with me, and everyone's like, are you crazy? I don't want to work with you. Nobody, crickets. Then what do we assume invariably about ourselves unconsciously? I'm not worth what I thought I was. What happens if we price based on our value is we are connecting our value with other people, other people's decisions, other people's buying decisions, the marketplace. Very dangerous to have our value dependent on other people, right? Especially when they spend their money. Because what happens if, in the first example here, of someone says, oh, that's it, only $500 to work with you an hour? Here's $50,000. And then suddenly the economy changes, or they have something comes up in their life, and oh, never mind, I'm not going to do it. Then our value, which was inflated based on some external thing, then comes down and gets deflated. Even bigger problem here. It's not a problem, though. It's an unresourceful way of looking at this. Because if we make our pricing based on our value, who's the reference point? Well, it's me. Right? I'm saying I'm worth this. Well, what about the person that I'm serving? Can you see it? It becomes even a little bit less service to them because the pricing is about me, not them. One of my mentors taught this piece I love, which is an issue that a lot of people in the business world have, especially in the coach realm. What do they call it? High ticket. It's hard for me to even think of it now. And I used to say it. I'm a high ticket coach, or what was it? I don't even remember the language, but you get what I mean. High ticket offers you often hear. Again, it's referencing me. Hi, I want to be paid a lot. Better languaging, premium value offer. And it might be the same number. However, it's a whole different game because the point of awareness, the focus is on the client, the customer. Right? So that leads us perfectly to the third way of pricing yourself, which is by far the best. By far the best. And I'm not saying you can't do the other ones, and they might be helpful ways to inform your pricing, but basing it on, right, the market or your value, they're losing propositions just by definition. So a much better way, right? And by the way, I'm sharing this specifically for you, one of my clients that I'm newly working with, and it's useful for everybody who has a business. So are you ready to know what's the best, most valuable, resourceful way to set your pricing? It's about the results. Whose results? Me as the coach, the business owner? No, not my results. It's about the results of the person that's paying in dollars, the client. So, well, what does that mean? How do we do that? Well, it's like this. Whatever your product or service is, if it's coaching, if it's health consulting, if it's teaching people how to drive a car or lose weight, you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't believe there was some value to that. Right? And nobody would pay you unless they believed that the result they're going to get is worth more than the amount they're going to pay. So here's the game, the exercise for you. What change happens for my client if they say yes to investing in themselves through you? They make a purchase. What they are saying is, I've got an issue or a problem or something I want to create. I believe that you can help me get whatever that is or let go of whatever that was. And so I'm paying you this amount of money for you to help me get that. It's about them. So then you, right, the person doing the pricing, you ask yourself, what's that result worth? Right? I had a client some years ago who still says to me this way, yeah, we are together, her and her partner, we are together because of the work that you and I did together. In fact, one time I was at a gathering after we were working together. I hadn't seen her guy in ages. I didn't know him really well. He pulled me aside. I was like, what's going to happen here? Was he upset about something? He's like, Daniel, I don't know what you and, I won't say the name, you and she talked about, and it changed our life. So what's the value on saving a marriage? I don't know. What do you think? What do you feel? How important is love? Or more important question, how important is that to the person that's coming to you? How much does it cost to get divorced? How much pain and agony is there when I know we love each other, though we don't know how to work it out? If you help people with that, what's that worth? What's it worth now, today, next week? What's it worth a year from now, 10 years from now? What would it cost if they didn't do that? If they continued to fight or struggle or have a divorce? Or, I was a fat kid. When I was a fat kid, I would have paid anything, any dollar amount, in order to learn how to not be fat, not be obsessed with thinking about what I'm eating and my body image and my self-worth being that. And I paid a lot over many years to coaches and teachers and courses and attention. I paid a lot with my own attention, my time, to learn that. And yes, you are absolutely right. It is priceless. True love, priceless. A working relationship, priceless. Yet, people are going to pay you with a price, with dollars. So how do you set the price? Well, you do. You think about it, you feel into it, maybe you talk to people about it. Yeah, what's that worth? What's that costing you now? How expensive? And who's a good person to ask? The person that you're offering this premium value service to. I just thought of something. It's worth rewinding for a moment. Market pricing, there's one more pernicious, nasty thing about market pricing. Because as soon as we determine our price based on the market, what are we saying? Subconsciously, I'm like everybody else. You're not. You are one of a kind. Your work only you can do. Your service, the product you created. Step out of market pricing and own that you are competitionless. Nobody can compete with you. It's just a fact. Okay, back to where we were, setting our pricing based on the transformation that occurs. If somebody makes an investment and say, okay, I'm going to invest in myself by working with you, what's going to change in their life? What's the result they're going to get? How do you determine that? You think into it, you feel into it. When a house goes on the market, how does it work? Well, the person selling the house says, I believe this house is worth this amount. And then what happens? People say, yes, no, actually, yeah, there's so much competition. I think it's worth more than that. Will you take that? Or they say, I'll give you an offer down below. Now, I'm not suggesting that you make your prices negotiable. I am suggesting, though, that somebody has to ascribe the value. Somebody has to set the price, and that's you. You set the price based on what you believe the transformation is worth to that person. Then, once you determine what that transformation is worth to them, how valuable it is, reduce your fee by a fraction of that. Personally, I love 10%. If I say, I'm going to help this business person double their income from $250,000 a year to $500,000 a year, right? What's that worth? Well, in 1 year, that would be worth $250,000. However, what they learn and what they develop in themselves, that's going to keep going for many years. So maybe we say, let's just say they're going to be in business for another 10 years, $250,000 a year increase over 10 years, well, that's 2.5 million, right? And presumably that's going to compound. They're going to get better and better. Still, I prefer when it comes to my pricing to be on the conservative side and say 1/10 of that transformational value. And that does a few beautiful things. One, when you price that way, what happens is then when you speak your fee, right, whether it's I'm going to work with you for this session for $500 or $200, or I'm going to work with you for the next 6 months to help you get that result. And you know, because you thought about it, you felt into it, maybe you've spoken to people that the value is this and the fee is this, then it's not scary to talk about your pricing. It's easy. That your people are paying peanuts, nothing compared to what the real value is. You know in yourself the value, the importance of that for them. Now, one of my mentors, a guy named Gurdjieff, who was a occult teacher, maybe 100 years ago, I forget the exact timing. Really interesting character, thought leader who worked with astrology. He charged $1,000. This was like 100 years ago. So that was an exorbitant amount. And people would say to him, why? Why do you charge so much? His response, because I only want to work with people that are ready to transform their lives. What does that point to? When you're setting the transformational value, what's it worth to that person, you also can consider what amount do they need to pay in order to be committed, or to be committed at the level that they will move through the challenges in order to get to that result, because change is typically not easy. We hold on to what we don't like, even though we don't like it because it's comfortable. Change is uncomfortable. So if we're going to help somebody create a big transformation in their life, they got to have skin in the game. They need to be committed. Money is not the only way to measure or define commitment. It's a good one though, and it's very common. And there are other ways when it comes to your services, talk about another time, to create commitment in clients. One of my mentors, Steve Hardison, before he retired, the investment to work with him was $200,000. There was a man who had been a client of his, was so impressed not just with his own results, but what he knew about the results that other clients of Steve's were getting. So he came to Steve and said, we need to write a book. Steve said, no, I don't want to write a book. Well, this guy, his name's Alan, convinced Steve in some way, moved him to say, okay, but I don't really want a book. If you want to do it, fine, cool. So what did Alan do? Went out and did over 100 interviews with all kinds of people. Tremendous amount of work. Compiled 700 something pages of transcripts. Eventually, that became a book. I recommend it. It's called The Ultimate Coach. And Alan did a tremendous amount, and that book has done so much good for so many people. Steve became so grateful to Alan for creating that, for encouraging Steve when he didn't really want it to happen. He didn't think it was going to work. Didn't think it was going to create such positive results in the world. After that, Alan came to Steve and said, I want to work with you again. How much do you guess Steve charged him? Guy had just done all this incredible amount of work, had brought so much benefit to Steve's life. So, full price, full investment. Why? Because he wanted Alan to show up having invested in himself. And there's so many great stories in our world, especially in coaching, especially when we're playing the premium value game, pricing our services in ways that might be uncomfortable so that we can grow into being the version of ourselves that can deliver on that level. When we're pricing in premium ways, one of the things that happens is people, if they have a challenge to create that level of fee, say $200,000 to Steve, something that happens very often is when they show up, Their first response is, that was such a big challenge for me to create that level of investment. One thing I learned, I don't need you. I just learned I can do things that I didn't believe I could do before. So, what do we got? 3 different ways of setting your pricing: market value, your value, and the best way, the transformational value, the result that you help people get. You can then speak with certainty. And by the way, if you're playing that game, you can also play the game where you create tons of value for other people at lower investment amounts. That's for me, that's why I do content like this with no financial cost to you. You're paying with your time, your attention. Right? I have a book that you can get for $16, blog posts. So you can create a whole suite of offers from premium value for those who have the greatest commitment all the way down to absolutely complimentary ways of serving people. And what we do when we serve that way is we create a better, more beautiful world. I hope that this makes sense and is incredibly useful to you. I love you. Thank you. Aloha.